So I did my project on the ethics of hunting.
Excuse me,
So
could you please have Lawson, Pasko, Kyler Hopper, Georgia Giannopoulos, Logan Galvin go to the CAP office?
Lawson is giving a presentation right now, but the rest can come.
All right, thank you.
all right. Well, I don't know what that was about, but
Take two.
take two. All right. So I'm doing my project on the ethics of hunting. So I want to start off by having y'all imagine that your alarm goes off at 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning. It's a Saturday morning, so all you want to do on Saturday is sleep in. But your alarm goes off, you get up, you get out of bed, you get dressed in your hunting clothes, and you walk to the truck. It's 32 or colder outside, and all you want to do is just go back inside and go back in your warm bed and sleep. But you force yourself to get in the truck, you drive to the property, and as you drive to the property, it's pitch black outside, and when you get to the property, you get out, you walk to your stand, you're sitting in the stand, and you're freezing, you're shaking, and all you want to do is go sit in the warm truck. But about 10, 15 minutes into the hunt, this above the tree line, the sun starts to rise, the birds start to chirp, the fog and the mist from the morning starts to burn off, and you're met with a beautiful sunrise. And as the sun comes up, the deer start to move, and it all of a sudden is all worth it. Waking up early and seeing the sunrise. Now I know people don't wake up early to see a sunrise or to um, see the birds chirping, and that's not why people get into hunting. But as a hunter, and as hunting is increasingly difficult, it is something that is you take away and is a positive that you have to is a positive of hunting. So how did I get into hunting? Well, I got into hunting because of the tradition of hunting. And this next picture, yes, that is a picture of me when I was little. That is me. That right there is my granddad, who got all of these guys in a hunting. And I have some of my best memories of hunting with my dad and my granddad and my uncles. For example, last year I killed my first turkey with my granddad using my other granddad's shotgun, or killing my first deer with my dad and shaking from excitement in the cold all in once, and him smiling. And that's one of my favorite pictures that I have. So hunting is something that has been a part of my life and has been something that has just been a amazing part of my life that I look back on happily. But I also want my kids to experience this when they're growing up. And in order to do that, there has to be some kind of law or rules in place to help preserve the animals that we love to hunt. And so, but in order for that, I've often wondered the question, why do people not like hunting? Because hunting is something that for me is completely like acceptable. I've grown around hunting my whole life. And when I moved to Charlotte when I was late elementary school or early middle school, I realized that people don't love hunting. Some people don't love hunting, and some people will think that killing poor Bambi is not good. And I've wondered why that is. But I've often seen pictures like this, and this I've seen this picture, and it honestly hurts me and makes me upset to see this picture. This man is standing on a pile of bison skulls. That is a hundreds, if not thousands, of bison skulls that man is standing on. And if you don't know, bison are basically cows that when you shoot them, you go about 100 yards and stop because cows are not the smartest animals on earth. Now, the people moving out west saw these huge herd of bisons and saw the Native Americans living off these bison, and they never saw an animal that was so easy and accessible to kill, and so they would wipe out these huge herd of bison, basically starving the Native Americans, but they would use the bison hides and all that for clothes, and oftentimes let the meat and the skulls and the bones just go to waste. But the Indians and Native Americans, when they would kill the bison, they'd use every part of it, the skin, the meat, the bones for tools. But then you had these Westerners come out and they just like would let these huge pile of bones and meat go to waste just because all they wanted was a fur. So, how do we prevent stuff like this from happening? That's what the DNR is for. The DNR stands for the Department of Natural Resources. They're basically the cops of hunting and wildlife. And these are the guys that when you're fishing and all that, you don't really want to see these guys pull up because they'll give you some pretty nasty tickets and they can fine you for big bucks. So but the positive thing of the DNR is they keep track of the animals and the population of how the animals are doing. And with the increase of people hunting, there's about 15.9 million people that hunt a year in the U.S., that's a ton of people that hunt. But as a result, the DNR are the people that keep track of the numbers and make sure the population of the deer don't drop and stay relatively the same year to year. And so these graphs show that. So this graph right here is the number of deer that are the average number of deer. You can see, yes, there's dropping, right? But relatively, the number has stayed pretty much the same. And this graph right here is really cool. So this graph, the blue represents 1.5-year-old deer. Orange is 3.5. If you don't know, 3.5-year-old deer is when the bucks start getting really mature and start getting to the impressive and big racks and all that. But 1.5-year-old deer is pretty much baby. It's like a young deer that is not fully developed yet. And as hunting has gotten more publicized and more popular, people have realized that there's no point of killing a small deer. So this is in 2001, so even for the past 20 years, the number of young deer has gone down significantly. Older deer. And that's a positive sign, especially considering the fact that when the deer get to 3.5 and 4-year-old years, they become significantly harder to kill. And so the fact that the numbers of older deer is rising significantly is a really positive sign for hunters and shows that as hunting has become more popular and publicized, it has become more of a people have more respect for the animals and are not killing deer just to kill deer, but to purposely make the deer get to the next age, get older, so that people can enjoy killing bigger deer. So brings up the question, is hunting really unethical? So I've been told that hunting is unethical and that hunting is killing a deer, killing a animal for no reason. There's no reason to kill a deer with a gun. That's outrageous. And yes, I can see that, but I also would like to bring up this picture. This is a picture of chickens. That is thousands of chickens crammed into this building. They're there their whole lives from the time they're born all the way to the dinner table. They're in this tight, tiny area their whole lives, and they don't ever see the sunlight. So, brings up the question, if hunting is unethical, where these deer live free their whole lives, they are free to run, free to live, and they get shot and they die within 30 seconds to about 2 minutes of getting shot. Is that more unethical than trapping these animals in this cage for their whole lives and fatten them up super unhealthily from the time they're a chick all the way to the time they go to the dinner table? And another stat is out of the 9 billion chickens that die a year, about 500 to 600 million chickens die from disease or from poor living conditions. So it brings up the question, is hunting really more unethical than these farming techniques? So what happens if we take away hunting? If we take away hunting, what will happen to the ecosystem, the population of deer. I know most of y'all have seen this, and I know Lila and Owen's not in this room, but has actually hit deer and has caused and typically totals the car, if not really severely messes the car up, and oftentimes kill the deer. Over 1/3 of the population of deer that die every year die from car accidents. So if we take away hunting, the number of deer in these suburban areas would increase by unbelievable amounts and would cause so many more car wrecks, and not even car wrecks, but deer and hogs and turkeys combined total cause about 10.2 to 10.3 billion dollars worth of damage in farming because they can decimate full like farms if you're not careful because they eat so much, and if there is nobody controlling the population of these animals, they just get out of control and they would completely just wipe out farms. So we would, so what does the Bible say about hunting? Well, Genesis 1:26 through 31. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but it's talking about how God said, let's let us make mankind in our own likeness. So they rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky and over the livestock and all the wilderness. So God is talking to the angels and saying that we should give the humans the right and the ability to have dominion over the livestock, keeping them in control, keeping them in those numbers that are good and survive healthy. And so God gives us the ability to keep the the numbers of these animals under control. And so Leviticus 17:13 is talking about when God says, anyone who hunts, let them drain the blood and not let them cook the meat in the own blood of the animal. So Leviticus 17:13 is when God is talking to the Israelites about how to prepare meat when you kill it. And this shows us that God has a way and he wants us to kill animals and not just kill them and use them unethically. Because if you're not careful, meat and other like raw meat and all that can cause serious disease. So this shows that God has an order in how he wants us to kill animals. It's not, he just wants us to kill animals and be unethical. He wants us to have respect for his creation that he's given us. And part of that respect is letting the next generation be able to enjoy his creation by either hunting, fishing, or just being out in the creation, like the sunrise I was talking about earlier. Any questions?
Great. Yes, y'all got any comments or feedback? Yes, sir.
All right, so talking about the ethics of hunting, did you look into anything? Let's take whitetail. Hunting.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on that?
So the thing about hunting with like bow compared to rifles is, especially when you get to like elk, it makes bow hunting is a lot more difficult than rifle hunting. Meaning you have to have a lot better aim. You can't just walk outside, shoot a deer from 200 yards with a rifle. You have to make them come within 100 yards to like 50 yards. 100 yards is a really far shot with a bow. So it makes it significantly more difficult, and bows can lead to more wounded deer because people will try shooting a 100-yard shot. But rifles can be more dangerous because if people aren't careful, shooting a gun, like you can, if you're careless with a gun, there's about 100 deaths a year recorded from hunting incidents with rifles. Never has there been any incidents with bows and arrows. But I mean, the fact that there is 100 or so injuries or deaths a year with rifles, it is still more dangerous to drive in a car with a deer because there's more deaths with for humans than hunting. So, yes. So yeah, that's a good question. So in so the DNR does regulate based on the population. So in some states, the number of deer you can kill can waiver. So for example, in North Carolina, there's a set 2 bucks you can kill, and 3 does you can kill. In South Carolina, you can kill, I think it's 2 or 3 bucks, and then you can kill as many does as you want as long as you buy extra tags. And the reason for that is there's a lot more deer in South Carolina, North Carolina. But there's bigger deer in North Carolina because of the fact that there is less, like people shoot less deer, and so the deer get bigger. For example, in Kansas, they only allow you to shoot 1 buck a year, and the buck in Kansas have gotten huge because of that. And so the DNR has been like they change how many deer you can kill to keep those numbers stable, depending on what state you're in. So depending on what state you're in, it will change from year to year and state to state on how many deer you can kill. Yeah. Favorite place I've hunted? Well, I haven't hunted like too many different states, but probably North Carolina, just because that's where I've hunted my whole life. And I've killed the biggest and the most deer there, so definitely North Carolina. It's great. Yes. Yes.
Going to these places actually people lost track of land. It would eventually
Yes,
really
ma'am.
bringing up those feelings.
Thank
So I
you.
hope you get to hunt all over the world and
Yeah, thank you.
a lot more experience and work with you.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to go out west and go elk hunting. That'd be my dream, just because out west there's these massive public pieces of land, and elk are such a cool creature. And I would love to go out west and go on elk hunting. Thank you.
Brought up the conservation thing. Can you
Yeah,
talk a little bit more about that? Like how do hunters contribute?
yeah. So most of the dollars that go into buying hunting license for like our North Carolina out of state hunting license is $500, which is ridiculous. I mean, for South Carolina, an in-state license is $12. So, but that money that you pay for the license and stuff, it goes straight to conservation efforts. So people don't realize that hunters are the main conservationists of the world, and the reason for that is because hunters want to see the creatures that they love to hunt. They want to see them, continue to be healthy, and so and the populations be healthy. So, for example, there is I forget what state it was. They took all the money that they got from duck license, and they bought 6 million acres worth of land for duck, for like public land for duck hunting and for conservation efforts. So hunters all around the world want to see these animals do well. So yeah, I mean that's the
Yeah. I love this project just because, and I've had several guys like this. That's one of the things that they I get to talk about hunting now. And it's interesting because like it's educational, it's informative, and I've seen those interactions even among students. It seems like this is one of those cases. It's culture all over the place, but it's one of those places where the people who seem to be the most critical, I want to be as fair as possible. People who seem to be the most critical about hunting, killing animals, and so on, also are the people who tend to know the least about it. And the more they come to know about it, and the people who know the more about deer and care the most and are most interested and fascinated by it are also the ones that, or hunters tend to be the ones that know the most about it and contribute the most to it.
Yeah.
For the side note, there's all these really great foundations where hunters, whenever they meet their quota, whenever they kill as many deer, that there are some states that have programs, and maybe you can tell me if North or South Carolina has this. But I've read about these programs where hunters, when they kill over a surplus or whatever, and it's true with fishing and so on, that they will clean all the meat, they'll process all the meat, and then they'll contribute it to, or they'll donate it to homeless shelters,
Yep.
Soup kitchens, just for people, for food pantries and so on. And it's one of those instances where it's like, wow, that's a brilliant system. Like that's a really good connection that we made there, right?
Yeah, so there's these programs that will highlight these super overpopulated areas, and they'll say, "Hey, we'll invite you to come shoot deer, as long as you do it like responsibly and ethically. We'll invite you to come shoot these deer here in these areas, and all the meat will get donated to these homeless shelters." And so there'll be times where they'll have like 100, 200 deer, in like these areas that are super tight, and so like deer can typically should live, there should be like one deer per every, I think it's like half mile to a mile, and there are these areas where there's like 200 acres of land that there's like 60 deer that live on, and so they'll have these people to come out and like shoot to thin out the population of deer to keep the population healthy, but then in turn they'll take all the meat that is killed from these areas and they'll go and donate it to homeless shelters, because that's the biggest source of need for these homeless shelters is like meat and protein. And so they'll take the deer meat and they'll donate it to these homeless shelters, which is a really cool use of meat.
And so two more questions for me. You mentioned it a couple times, or something like it to Mr. Conway about the right. I would say the right and the wrong way, ethical, unethical way of just like the practice of, all right, here's this deer, time to shoot. There are things that you as a hunter have in mind to do this the right way and the wrong way, and it's largely in terms of how much suffering you're causing and so on. Can you speak a little bit about that?
Yeah, I think as a hunter, like especially when you have a big deer that walks out, the only thing you want to do is shoot. Like you just get so into the moment that you'll basically do that at any cost. So even if you don't have a good shot, you shoot the deer, and that often leads to wounding deer and hurting deer, and that that's something that I have personally done. But I mean, I don't want to say that's part of hunting. It is, and it's not a good part of hunting. But I mean, that's what these hunting courses that you have to take are like. In order to get licensed, you have to take these hunting courses, and they talk consistently about how you have to calm down, shoot, and like it runs you through exercises. And the reason for that is so that when you get in those moments, you don't like freak out and just shoot and hit a deer in the shoulder and wound it. And so if you listen to those like routines and like slow down and settle down and shoot the deer, it is honestly one of the most ethical ways of harvesting meat. So yeah.
Last question I got.
Yeah.
A big issue, and I think there's some really cool systems in play here too. Talk about the population control for the animals. They get overpopulated, they start running out in the streets and stuff like that. But also, can you tell us a little bit about invasive species? So, like when certain animals get into an area they don't belong and so on. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah. So hogs have been recently have been a huge problem. These hogs have been wild hogs have released into like Texas and South Carolina and Georgia and Alabama, and have just destroyed farms, and they are super destructive because they'll like dig up the soil and they can mess up a farm real quick. And so these hogs are they're invasive, and that means that they're pests. So you don't have to have a license. You don't have to have any kind of permission from the state to kill these animals, and you can kill as many as you want because they are so disruptive. They can cause huge problems for farmers and safety too. They are dangerous creatures if you get across a whole big thing of them. Like they are dangerous creatures. So they're invasive. So that means you can just kill them as much as you want because you can't really cause damage to hogs. Like they'll just come back more and more and more. So like if you weren't able to kill those hogs, the number of those would be unbelievable. So that's one thing that we as like hunters have tried to get better at is keeping the population of pests down because oftentimes those hogs will mess up deer hunting habitats. So
Classmates, you got any questions or comments?
yes,
Kind of taking that like one step further.
yeah,
I'm sure you know like capture them and like re-tag them and then put them back out, hunt those and turn them in.
yeah.
I think that's going a step too far, even though they are invasive.
I mean, I think they definitely have to be careful with that because, like, coyotes are a predator to deer, and you don't want to wipe out a population of like a coyote or something like that. You don't want to wipe out a species of an animal to save another animal. Like you want the ecosystem to be like even, and wiping out a bunch of coyotes could cause deer to get overpopulated. Um, I mean, I think that that's honestly like a good thing because coyotes are a problem and there's too much of them. So yes, I think that's good. I think we just got to be careful about letting that number get too out of hand. Yes, cool.
Thoughts on
So what do you mean? Like, are you talking about trophy hunting, meaning like high fences, or like trophy hunting from
hunting? Kill this animal, and like for the bison example, basically killing the animal, taking it and then eating a lot of it.
yeah,
Because there are instances even in South Carolina I've seen where there's just deer with missing parts, but then everything else.
yeah, yeah. I've seen. I think the biggest thing is the more that these food banks and all that are publicized, where you can donate the meat from the deer. I think that's the best way to, honestly, one of the better ways to use the meat of deer, and especially if you hunt for, um, like, if you hunt for only bucks or whatever. I think you should only take 1 to 2 bucks a year. I don't think you should take 3 or 4 because if you're just gonna kill bucks, if you want them to get to the bigger size, then you will like as a result you won't kill as many because you want them to get bigger. But if you kill all the bucks in an area, then they're not gonna get big. But yeah, I think the best way to use the meat is if you're not gonna eat it, because some people think deer meat is gamey, then donating it to those homeless shelters is use of it. But I would say if you do that, I'd be careful not just to kill a bunch of deer. Like keep it to 1 or 2 deer. Poaching is poaching is an issue, and it'll always be an issue. Like people will always try to kill animals and use them for and like yeah, that's always going to be an issue. But that's what the DNR is for. The DNR is to try to help prevent stuff like that from happening, and the DNR has the ability to raid your home if they have a feeling or a tip that you have been killing your license, and they can go into your home whenever you want, or whenever they want, and they can check to see if you have all those deer. So sometimes they even have more power than like police officers when it comes to that. So I mean, that's what the DNR is for, to help keep that down.
I really like how you brought up that because like we can and but like we also don't see like every time we eat like chicken sandwich or Chick-fil-A everything. We don't see like everything that goes into that. I think like that's like a pretty cool thing. Like I've never done like it's just like it is a lot.